Hello everyone, this is RCTCreations here, and we are back to the Fun Corporation, this time with the 1974 season rundown. So, in the previous episode we ran down the 1973 season, very successful, and we talked about constructed our first added coaster to either of the parks here in the corporation with Funland's Wildcat coaster. And while it's just a generic clone that you can plop into multiple parks, it's still a pretty big milestone for us, being our first added coaster. Alright, so to start this episode off, I want to do a little bit of detail work, because I really haven't done much with the surrounding area of either of the parks. And that's the first thing we're going to jump into. So what we're going to do first is construct our on-site corporate offices for both Funland and Joyland, and then we're going to add a picnic pavilion to both parks as well. And the picnic pavilion isn't going to do much for actual in-game stuff, however, for realism, it's a place where guests can potentially rent a pavilion for a company or, buy group tickets and just have a place to go gather during the day and just take some time off of the park. So let's go ahead and jump right into the construction of our corporate offices and our picnic pavilions at Funland and Joyland, and we'll get kicked off with the Funland corporate offices and then work over into Joyland. All right, and the Fun Corporation corporate offices have been completed at both Funland and Joyland, so now the full-time staff have a place to work that's not directly in the park, and we gave them a nice big parking lot as well, and a nice small detail I like. A place near me just recently put an office up, and it gave them a nice little garden to walk around in when they take breaks, so they aren't just stuck inside all the time. If they want to go out and walk through the gardens, they can. And then at Funland, I gave a nice little dock, another place for some employees to go sit down over a break if they would so choose to do that. Now that the corporate offices are complete, let's go ahead and get into the new additions in terms of rides for both parks. We'll start with the construction of Funland's brand new Aquatica area, which will feature 3 new rides. Well, 2 new rides, 3 quote-unquote, because we're going to have 2 log flumes open that are going to be sharing the same name. In Orca Expedition, 2 aero development log flumes we're going to put inside a massive show building and feature a 50-foot drop on at the end. And then we're also going to open a Hoos Rides swing around in that area as well. You'll see me put Seahorse for the name. We do not keep that. It ends up with the final product name being the Octopus, which is a nice way to do it. And the ride itself holds 16 riders, so that would have 8 arms, although visually the ride, I believe, has 10 arms, so just ignore that. It only holds 16 passengers, it has 8 arms, therefore it is going to be called Octopus. Now, as for Joyland, what we're going to do, if you read the description of the Funland Wildcat video, you will notice, or will have noticed, that the Fun Corporation purchased 2 Schwarzkopf Wildcat coasters at the end of the 1972 season, and in 73 Funland opened theirs, and in 74 Joyland will open theirs as well. I actually end up liking the way the one at Joyland looks a lot more than the one at Funland, just because it's so centrally located. But let's go ahead and hop into construction. We'll start this time with Joyland and construction of their Wildcat coaster, and we'll move on into Funland's Aquatica construction area. I will talk to you shortly once construction is complete. All right, with that doozy of a construction project complete, we are ready to get into the Joyland finances part of this video and the corporate breakdown of the 1974 season. Thank you all for staying on board this long. I know that was a long construction project, but I'm glad that it's done and we have a couple new rides for our parks. All right. Into the Joyland revenue breakdown. Again, a very successful season compared to previous years. In fact, this year we made about $150,000 more than we did last year, so a more successful season than last. And in fact, we nearly broke $600,000 in profit in the month of August. And to me, pretty darn awesome. And that means we are right on our way with this company to making two very successful parks. October, you see there, did break $600,000 in profit, and October has been the most popular month at both parks together that we have seen thus far. And we'll go ahead and roll on over into the ridership tab. And if we look at the ridership, White Cyclone once again breaking 100,000 riders in the 1974 season. It is at 400,000 total riders over its 4 seasons of operation. And if we look down at our flat rides, we have our Joyland Mainline Railroad, the most popular ride and most ridden ride, I would say, at Joyland, with over 120,000 rides given in the season, and it's just short of 500,000 total rides over the course of its operational life. So overall, nothing too different this season compared to the previous, although you will notice here the Wildcat coaster we got for Joyland also has a very abysmal total ridership for its first year of operation. And that is something we'll definitely need to consider as we look into future expansion, and especially on a park that has very limited space to expand. That might be something that comes out relatively early as we look on into future additions to Joyland. All right, and with that, we'll go ahead and move on into the Funland revenue breakdown, and our total profit at Funland just short of what Joyland brought in at $1,670,000. So looking pretty darn good for both parks. If we look at August, again, just short of 500,000 gained in that month, and October was actually less than August, which is the opposite of the Joyland park, as we brought in $417,000 there. One thing you will notice compared to last year is the months of January and February were not profitable. Reason for that, the big reason for that, and the big reason for the big expenditures you see at both parks is the construction costs we endured for both the corporate offices at both parks and the additions at both parks. Funland eating a very big chunk of that because of how expensive Orca Expedition was and the construction of a whole themed area as opposed to just one ride. Now, if you look, Funland way more guests than Joyland brings in. We broke 8,000 twice at the end of 2 different months in both August and October. The most guests we had at Joyland at any given time was just short of 5,400, just over 53, I think, actually, total in terms of guests in the park. So Funland, being year-round, is going to draw more guests total, but it is also home to more guests at any given time as well. And in game terms, that's just going to be because of the bigger area we have and the fact that Funland has more total rides compared to Joyland. Now, if we hop on over into ridership, we can see that the most popular ride of the season is once again going to be Downtown Airway, bringing in just under 250,000 riders on the season, which is down from the 1973 season total. And then if we go up, we look at Cyclone, also going to be bringing in slightly fewer guests than it did the previous season. And in fact, most rides are going to be bringing in fewer guests. Reason for that being, we opened that brand new area and that had 3 brand new rides in it. And if you look at the first season of operation for Orca Expedition, which opened in June, it brought in over 100,000 riders. Now that 100,000 riders is going to be deceiving because we have 2 separate flumes, and I added both the total riders for both flumes together into one number, the same way I did with the Midway main lift and then the 2 spiral slides we have as well. So those are 2 rides whose totals are added together. So overall, we brought in more profit this season at both parks compared to the previous year, and that is with the massive costs of the roller coaster we added to Joyland and the brand new themed area we added to Funland. So 1974, very, very good for the Fun Corporation and both parks within our chain. Now, right away, a modification I know that needs to be made to Orca Expedition is the fact that the ride is about 7 minutes long, and that is ridiculously long, to the point where the guests are wanting to get off by the time they get to the big final drop. So what we're going to do with that, we're going to contact Aero Development to come in and modify the lift hills of our flumes and speed them up just a little bit, and that will hopefully lower the ride time just enough that guests are happy with it. And at this time, this was a very common thing, especially with, you know, some rides that weren't necessarily totally proven yet. I'm not going to go ahead and say that the log flume wasn't proven by that point. However, with a big design like this, that is something that, you know, possibly would come up, and in that time it was very common to have to modify rides after they already went up, and that's something for the first time at the Fun Corporation we're going to experience. So over the off season, we're going to have Aero Development come in and modify the Orca Expedition lifts to speed them up and make them just slightly faster to bring our total ride time down. So that's something we have to look forward to over the off season. And now let's go ahead and drop into the notable additions in the coaster world for 1974. And I'm going to be completely honest, I was very surprised by how few additions there were. It was a very, very dry season for roller coasters. So the first coaster I'm going to go ahead and cover is the Trailblazer. It is an Aero mine train located at Hershey Park, and I believe it was the first mine train scaled ride that was fully steel. Coaster I have personally ridden. The first time I went in 2023... Yeah, it was 2023. It was closed and being worked on, so it was the only coaster credit I missed on my first trip to Hershey Park. However, I was fortunate enough to go back this season and get that ride under my belt, so that was an extra coaster to add to my account. Next coaster to talk about is going to be the Runaway Mine Train at Six Flags Great Adventure. I got this on the same trip in which I first went to Hershey Park. Now, Runaway Mine Train, I mean, both Trailblazer and Runaway Mine Train aren't horribly advanced. I mean, Trailblazer at 43 feet, Runaway Mine Train sitting at 60 feet. Runaway Mine Train being significant because it was Great Adventure's first roller coaster, and that park also opened in 1974, so it was the opening coaster to come with that park. One thing about this ride that was really interesting is the lap bars, at least the current lap bars, are very narrow, so I was always worried I was going to be unable to get out of it. However, it was fun enough that I rode it twice, because at the end of the ride, there's this Aero Triangle Hill kind of sitting at the end. And Aero Triangle Hills are just one of my favorite elements of all time. So I enjoyed Runaway Mine Train quite a bit. Now, the last coaster to talk about for the 1974 season is Scooby-Doo at King's Dominion. Now, King's Dominion actually opened its doors in 1975. However, they did open the doors to their Lion Country Safari at the end of 1974, and with that they opened Scooby-Doo as kind of a preview to guests to try to draw them in and get them ready for the 1975 season over there. Now, Scooby-Doo, now known as Woodstock Express, is a cloned layout of the same ride at Kings Island, and I think Carowinds also eventually gets one of these rides, although that might be in 75, but I can't remember off the top of my head. So Scooby-Doo opening at King's Dominion as a bit of a preview. Now, as for other coasters that opened in 1974, looking through RCDB, these were the only permanent fixtures that I really saw of any note, to me anyway. I have ridden all but Scooby-Doo at King's Dominion, and I was going to ride it. Darn it was closed when I went to ride it due to weather, and I missed on that one until I get the chance to get back out to King's Dominion, hopefully this coming year, but it might be delayed as I try to get more parks under my belt. All the other editions of 1974 looked to be traveling SDC Galaxies, Schwarzkopf Wildcats. There's a few other model names in there that I can't think of off the top of my head, but these were really the only big additions that I saw that I thought were really worth noting. And even then, these are just, you know, 2 Aero mine trains and then a clone of a small wooden coaster. But fret not, as the seasons continue, we will have some very notable additions, and the adventure will get even greater, especially starting in 1975, and I cannot wait to share the addition we're going to add at Funland, and to explore where the amusement industry goes in the year of 1975. Thank you all for tuning in and sticking it out through, I believe, the longest episode of the series thus far. A lot of construction getting done and a lot of rides we have added. Thank you for tuning in to the 1974 season rundown, and we will see you in 1975. A big year for the amusement industry.